What if a plane vanished so completely that even the US military couldn't explain it? No debris, no distress call, no trace of the 177 souls aboard. Just silence, stretching across the Pacific Ocean, deeper than any map could show, wider than any imagination could grasp. That is the story of Flying Tiger Line Flight 739, a mystery that has haunted aviation history for more than 60 years. March 15th, 1962. Guam's runway lights flickered against the darkened sky as Flight 739, a Lockheed Super Constellation, prepared for takeoff. Its cargo was unusual: 93 soldiers being deployed to Vietnam, along with 11 crew members tasked with ensuring their safe passage. It was a routine mission in what was already a tense world, a mission expected to take a simple, predictable route across the Pacific to the Philippines. But nothing about this flight would be routine. The engines roared to life. Pilots called in their pre-takeoff checks, confirming fuel levels, weather conditions, and course. Ground personnel waved the last goodbyes. In the early hours, visibility was clear, the Pacific calm, a perfect night for a flight of this type. As the plane lifted into the sky, the horizon swallowed it slowly, the city lights fading beneath the rising wings. On board, soldiers chatted quietly, unaware that history would mark their journey in a way no one could have imagined. Crew members went through final checks, instruments gleaming under the soft glow of cockpit lights. Everything appeared normal, flawless even, in these first critical minutes of flight. Flight 739 climbed steadily, reporting altitude and heading to air traffic controllers. Radio signals were clear, routine. But beyond the surface of this calm narrative, the seeds of mystery were already taking root. For decades, aviation experts have replayed those first moments in their minds. Could a mechanical failure have occurred so quickly, so violently, that the crew could not send a distress call? Could a sudden change in weather, invisible to radar, have forced the aircraft off course? Or was it something entirely different, something the records still do not reveal? By the time Flight 739 reached the midpoint of its journey, the first reports from observers in the region began to stir. A tanker ship far below the flight path glimpsed a sudden flash of light high above the water, a momentary flare that disappeared almost instantly. Was it a reflection, a minor electrical anomaly, or the first indication that the aircraft was in grave danger? Minutes ticked by. The last confirmed radio contact occurred as Flight 739 transmitted its routine position check. Controllers expected another update minutes later, a simple acknowledgement, but it never came. Not one word, not a single signal. Search protocols were initiated as soon as concern arose, but at first it seemed impossible. The Pacific is an unforgiving expanse, vast, deep, relentless. A single aircraft could vanish without leaving a whisper behind. Even so, the U.S. military dispatched planes and ships to scour the area. They combed the waves, monitored radar echoes, and retraced the flight path over and over. Still, nothing. Investigators examined every possible lead. Was there evidence of an in-flight explosion, sabotage, enemy interference? No credible threat had been recorded. Aircraft maintenance logs were pristine. The Super Constellation was renowned for reliability. And yet the flight never arrived. Families of the soldiers and crew were left in a limbo of fear and uncertainty. Letters were sent to the Department of Defense, requests for information were made. Some families received polite but inconclusive answers, while others heard nothing at all. Over time, the names of those lost became etched in memory alone, without graves, without closure. Aviation historians later described Flight 739 as one of the most perplexing disappearances of the 20th century. Unlike other incidents, where debris or a wreck site eventually revealed what had gone wrong, Flight 739 left nothing. No life rafts, no floating seats, no oil slick. Even minor fragments that could have survived the ocean's grasp were absent. Attempts to reconstruct the flight path highlighted another chilling factor. Even a slight navigational error could have placed the aircraft miles off course, beyond the already vast search areas. Calculations of wind, drift, and currents only added to the uncertainty. The plane could have gone down anywhere, or so researchers theorized, in a region too expansive for human effort to fully cover. What compounded the mystery was the era itself. In 1962, aviation technology was advanced, but nowhere near today's level. Radar coverage was limited. Radio communication depended entirely on line-of-sight signals. If Flight 739 had strayed even slightly, or if a sudden catastrophic failure occurred, there was little chance of reaching help. Back on the ground in Guam, controllers reviewed every communication log, every mechanical check, every weather report. Night after night, they replayed the transmission recordings. Nothing indicated distress. Nothing indicated malfunction. Flight 739 simply vanished. By the time the sun rose over the Pacific, planes and ships had been deployed across hundreds of miles, but there was still no sign. Observers reported calm seas. Visibility was good. It should have been a straightforward search. Yet the ocean yielded no secrets. It was as if Flight 739 had been swallowed whole. Military officials convened, investigation boards assembled. Every conceivable scenario was considered. Mid-air collision, sudden structural failure, fuel-related explosion, navigational error, even enemy action. All were plausible in theory, but none matched the evidence, because there was no evidence. No floating wreckage, no survivors, nothing to analyze. Just absence. The deeper experts probed, the more chilling the implications became. An entire aircraft, with nearly 100 passengers, could disappear without a trace. Not just for days, not just for weeks, but for decades. By the afternoon, the search intensified. Ships spread out in a grid across the presumed flight path. Aircraft scoured the waves with binoculars, cameras, and radar. Yet all that met their eyes was the endless, indifferent blue of the Pacific. Reports came in from other vessels in nearby shipping lanes, occasional sightings of flares, brief reflections off the water, but nothing confirmed. Each report sparked hope, then died in frustration. It became increasingly clear that Flight 739 had disappeared in a way that defied all conventional explanation. As evening fell, officials faced a stark reality. This was not a typical aviation accident. This was an event that would challenge every principle of search, rescue, and investigation. It would confound experts, haunt families, and puzzle the aviation community for generations to come. And then, in the quiet of that Pacific night, the world realized the unthinkable. Flight 739 was gone. No wreckage, no distress signal, no trace of the people aboard. Not a single clue as to how a fully operational, routine flight could vanish completely. Every search conducted afterward, every report filed, every theory proposed, it all began from this one impossibly empty moment. This was not just a disappearance, it was a void. A gap in history that refused to close, a mystery that would echo across the decades, shaping investigations, haunting historians, and testing the limits of human comprehension. The sky above was empty, the ocean below indifferent, and somewhere between them, Flight 739 had vanished, leaving behind nothing but questions. Questions that remain unanswered to this very day. No one would ever forget the final words transmitted. No one would ever forget the uncertainty. And no one would ever know what truly happened to flight. The moment Flight 739 vanished, a ripple of panic spread through Guam's control towers. Radar operators checked and rechecked their screens, but there was nothing. No echo, no trace, just the endless blue of the Pacific and the unanswered questions that seemed to grow heavier with every second. Search and rescue protocols were launched immediately. Ships altered course, planes climbed into the sky, all scanning the ocean's surface with binoculars and primitive radar. Yet the waters remained calm, almost eerily still, reflecting the first hints of dawn. For hours, every observation yielded nothing. The Super Constellation had a flawless record, yet no airplane is immune to sudden catastrophe. Could a fuel explosion have destroyed the aircraft midair? Perhaps, but nothing in the logs or witness reports suggested an in-flight fire prior to disappearance. Sabotage? Enemy interference? Nothing pointed to it. Every theory led back to the same maddening reality. Flight 739 had vanished completely. Decades later, aviation historians would look back on Flight 739 and call it one of the most perplexing disappearances in aviation history. Unlike other aircraft, where wreckage eventually reveals the cause, Flight 739 left no clues. No fragments to analyze, no floating seats. The ocean had swallowed it whole. But the mystery didn't remain dormant. Over the years, private explorers, aviation enthusiasts, and researchers began returning to the case. Advances in oceanography, sonar mapping, and underwater robotics offered new possibilities. Could modern technology find what the 1960s search could not? Side-scan sonar and autonomous underwater vehicles have since mapped portions of the Pacific that were previously unreachable. Still, no traces of Flight 739 have emerged. Experts calculate that even minor deviations in the flight path could have placed the aircraft miles outside the initial search zones, leaving the plane buried in the abyss, unseen for decades. The families of those lost never stopped searching in their own way. Memorials were established, letters were written, names were read aloud each year. 96 names inscribed in stone, standing against the vast indifference of the ocean. They remembered every face, every smile, every life cut short. And in remembering, they refused to let Flight 739 fade into history. Some theories have emerged over time. Could the aircraft have entered a slow, silent descent, hidden beneath ocean currents, carried far from the search area? Could a sudden mechanical failure have left the crew helpless, unable to call for help? Perhaps a combination of factors, weather, human error, mechanical issue, all collided in a way no one could have anticipated. But these remain just theories, speculative reconstructions built on fragments of incomplete data. And yet, the chilling fact remains, even with all the advances of modern technology, Flight 739 remains unseen. Deep trenches, underwater canyons, and miles of shifting ocean floor continue to guard its secrets. The Pacific has claimed it, and it refuses to let go. In the 21st century, some researchers began advocating for the declassification of Cold War-era military files, believing that clues may not only lie in the ocean but in forgotten archives, still sealed from the public eye. Could hidden records finally reveal what happened? Or will the truth remain locked away, waiting for a time when someone is brave enough to confront it? The disappearance of Flight 739 has inspired countless studies, documentaries, and expeditions, yet the questions outnumber the answers. How can a fully operational flight carrying 107 people vanish without a trace? How could the most advanced search efforts of the time fail to locate even a fragment of evidence? And most importantly, what does it say about the vast, unexplored spaces of our own world? The Pacific itself seems almost alive in its silence. Currents sweep endlessly, storms rearrange the surface, and the abyss below hides its treasures from all who would seek them. The ocean is patient, indifferent, and terrifying in its immensity. Flight 739 lies somewhere in this depth, a ghost frozen in time, a story still untold. For those who study aviation history, Flight 739 is not just an accident. It is a symbol of mystery, a reminder of how little we can control, and how the Earth can hold its secrets longer than we can imagine. And for the families, it is a wound without closure, a space where memory and absence coexist. Even now, decades later, new search initiatives are proposed. Private organizations, technological innovators, and dedicated historians continue to scan the waters, comb through documents, and analyze every shred of data. Each attempt brings hope. Each attempt rekindles the question, could the answers finally surface? Or will the Pacific remain silent for another generation? The story of Flight 739 is not simply a tale of disappearance. It is a story of endurance, of memory, of human curiosity, of the refusal to accept that something so significant can vanish entirely. And that refusal is perhaps the most powerful testament to the lives lost that day. Because the plane may be gone, but the people aboard are not forgotten. They live in the memories of their families, in the memorials erected in their honor, and in the questions that refuse to be silenced. And now, the haunting truth emerges. Flight 739 is more than a missing aircraft. It is a symbol of the unknown, a ghost of the skies, and a reminder that even with all our knowledge, all our technology, there are still corners of the world that defy understanding. Somewhere beneath the unbroken expanse of the Pacific, it waits, silent, still, beyond our reach. And every day that passes, the ocean continues its eternal vigilance, holding Flight 739 in a grip that may never release. The plane disappeared, the crew vanished, the soldiers never arrived, and yet the story refuses to end. Because in every ocean current, in every sonar ping, in every research mission and archive investigation, the shadow of Flight 739 lingers. It is there, unseen but unforgettable. and it will haunt the skies and seas of history forever. Please like and subscribe.